In the dim glow of 2 moons, the battlefield lay silent except for the faint hum of alien technology scattered across the desolate terrain. The soldier, a human male clad in battered armor, stood amidst the remnants of what had once been an outpost on the edge of nowhere. His breath came in ragged gasps, each one carrying the metallic tang of blood and fear. He was alone now, or so he thought, until her voice pierced through the stillness. "You are real," she said, her tone soft yet disbelieving, like someone waking from a dream they didn't want to leave behind. The words hung between them, fragile as spider silk spun under starlight. She stepped into view, her form shimmering with an otherworldly grace that defied logic. Her skin glowed faintly, not quite silver but something more ethereal, and her eyes held galaxies within their depths. The soldier froze, his weapon half-raised, uncertainty warring with instinct. What are you?" he managed, his voice hoarse from hours of shouting commands that no longer mattered. She tilted her head, studying him as though he were both a curiosity and a relic. "I am called Lyra," she replied simply, though there was nothing simple about the weight of her presence. "And my parents always told me humans were myths. Stories whispered around fires when we needed to explain things we couldn't understand." Her gaze lingered on him, searching for confirmation, denial, anything to make sense of this moment. The soldier lowered his weapon slightly, confusion clouding his features. "Myths? You mean, you've never seen a human before?" Lyra shook her head, her long hair shifting like liquid light. "No. We thought your kind existed only in tales passed down through generations. Tales of beings who fought wars over petty squabbles, who destroyed worlds without thought, who loved fiercely despite it all." There was awe in her voice, tinged with something else. Fear? Hope? He couldn't tell. For a moment, neither spoke. The air seemed heavier, charged with unspoken questions and centuries of misunderstanding. Finally, the soldier broke the silence. "Well, I guess you're not wrong about some of those things," he admitted gruffly, adjusting his grip on his rifle. "But if we're myths to you, then what does that make you?" "A survivor," Lyra answered without hesitation. "Like you." Survivor. The word echoed in his mind, sharp and bitter. It fit too well. They were standing on the ruins of a war neither had started but both were trapped in, a conflict between species who barely understood each other beyond the language of violence. And yet here they were, face to face, 2 strangers bound by circumstance and the shared exhaustion of survival. "How did you find me?" he asked after a pause, suspicion creeping back into his tone. He scanned the horizon, half expecting reinforcements or enemies to appear at any moment. "I didn't," Lyra said, her expression unreadable. "I was sent to investigate this sector after reports of unusual activity. When I arrived," she gestured vaguely at the wreckage surrounding them, "this is what I found. And then, you." He frowned, trying to piece together her story. "Sent by whom?" "Your people." "Yes," she said, though there was a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. "Though perhaps people isn't the right word. My kind doesn't think of ourselves as a unified whole. Not anymore." The soldier nodded slowly, unsure whether to trust her but unable to deny the sincerity in her voice. "So why are you talking to me instead of shooting me? Or calling for backup?" Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile, though it lacked humor. "Because I've spent my entire life believing humans were just stories. And now I'm looking at one. Do you have any idea how strange that feels?" "About as strange as finding out aliens actually exist," he shot back, though his tone softened. "Look, I don't know what game you're playing, but I'm not exactly in the mood for riddles." "It's no game," she said sharply, stepping closer. "Do you think I wanted this? To stumble upon the living proof of everything I was taught to doubt? Everything I thought I knew?" Her intensity caught him off guard. For a brief moment, he saw past the alien exterior, the glowing skin, the impossibly graceful movements, and glimpsed something painfully familiar: vulnerability. She wasn't so different from him, standing amidst the ashes of a world gone wrong, searching for answers that might not even exist. Before he could respond, a low rumble shook the ground beneath their feet. Both turned instinctively toward the source, weapons raised once more. A shadow loomed on the horizon, growing larger with every passing second. Whatever it wasn't friendly. "We need to move," the soldier said urgently, already backing away. "Now." Lyra hesitated, torn between caution and curiosity. "Where will you go? Back to your side? To fight another meaningless battle?" He clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling to the surface. "What choice do I have? This isn't exactly a vacation spot." "And what about me?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Should I return to my commanders and tell them I've encountered a human? That our greatest myth walks among us? What do you think they'll do with that information?" The question hung heavy in the air, unanswered. Neither knew what awaited them beyond the next ridge or the next decision. All they had was the present, a fragile truce forged in the shadow of destruction. As the shadow drew nearer, Lyra made up her mind. "Follow me," she said abruptly, turning toward a cluster of jagged rocks. "There's a cave system nearby. If we're lucky, it'll buy us time." The soldier hesitated, torn between mistrust and necessity. But as the first shots rang out in the distance, echoing like thunder, he realized he had no choice. Together, they ran, leaving behind the remains of a world that had tried, and failed, to keep them apart. The cave entrance yawned wide, its mouth dark and foreboding, but it offered sanctuary against the chaos outside. As they slipped inside, the soldier couldn't help but glance back at Lyra, wondering if trusting her was the biggest mistake of his life, or the beginning of something far stranger than either of them could imagine. Inside the cavern, the air grew cooler, dampened by the echoes of water dripping somewhere deeper within. The soldier pressed himself against the rough stone wall, listening intently for signs of pursuit. Lyra moved silently beside him, her luminous skin casting faint shadows on the uneven surfaces. Despite the urgency of their situation, he found himself stealing glances at her, marveling at how utterly alien she appeared, and yet how human she sounded. "What happens now?" he asked quietly, breaking the tense silence. Lyra exhaled slowly, her shoulders relaxing ever so slightly. "That depends on you," she replied cryptically. "If you believe me, we can work together to survive whatever comes next. If not," she trailed off, letting the implication hang in the stale air. He frowned, gripping his rifle tighter. "Work together? With you? Why should I trust you?" Her gaze locked onto his, unwavering. "Because I saved your life back there. Because I could have left you to die, or worse, but I didn't. Isn't that enough?" It wasn't, not really. Trust didn't come easily, especially not in a universe where betrayal lurked around every corner. But something in her tone resonated with him, a raw honesty that felt almost familiar. Against his better judgment, he nodded. "Fine. For now, we stick together. But if you try anything—" "I won't," she interrupted firmly. Then, softer, almost to herself, "I can't afford to." The sound of distant footsteps echoed through the cavern, reverberating off the walls. Both froze, holding their breaths as the noise grew louder. Whoever, or whatever, was out there wasn't far behind. Without exchanging a word, they crept further into the labyrinthine tunnels, their steps muffled by the wet earth beneath their feet. After several minutes of cautious navigation, they reached a narrow passage that opened into a larger chamber. Moonlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling, illuminating a pool of water at the center. The soldier crouched near the edge, scanning their surroundings while Lyra knelt beside him, her glowing form providing just enough light to see clearly. "We can't stay here forever," she murmured, dipping her fingers into the cool water. "They'll find us eventually." "Who are they?" he asked sharply, turning to face her. "Your people? Mine? Or someone else entirely?" Lyra hesitated, her reflection rippling in the pool. "Both. Neither. Does it matter? In the end, we're all pawns in a game none of us fully understands." Her words struck a chord deep within him, stirring memories of battles fought and lost, of comrades who had fallen in the name of causes they barely believed in. He clenched his fists, anger bubbling to the surface. "So what, we just give up? Let them hunt us down like animals?" "No," she said fiercely, meeting his gaze. "We fight. But not blindly. Not the way our leaders would want us to. If we're going to survive, we need to think differently. Act differently. Her conviction surprised him. For all her ethereal beauty, there was steel beneath her calm exterior, a determination that mirrored his own. Slowly, he nodded. All right. So what's the plan? Lyra straightened, her expression thoughtful. First, we need supplies. Weapons, food, anything we can scavenge from the wreckage above. Second, she hesitated, glancing toward the tunnel they'd entered through. We need to figure out who's hunting us. Only then can we decide where to go. The soldier considered her words, weighing the risks. Splitting up would be suicide. We stick together. Agreed, she said, rising to her feet. But we move quickly. Time isn't on our side. As they prepared to leave the chamber, the soldier paused, catching her arm. Why are you doing this? He asked, his voice low. Helping me, I mean. You barely know me. Lyra looked at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and resolve. Because maybe, just maybe, we're meant to prove our parents wrong. Maybe humans and my kind aren't supposed to hate each other. Maybe we're supposed to change the story. Her words lingered in the air as they stepped back into the darkness, bound by a fragile hope that felt as perilous as the journey ahead. Above ground, the landscape had shifted subtly under the twin moon's eerie glow. Shadows stretched unnaturally long, distorting the wreckage into grotesque shapes. The soldier led the way cautiously, his senses attuned to every rustle of wind or snap of twig. Beside him, Lyra moved with a fluidity that seemed almost unnatural, her luminous skin blending eerily with the pale light. There, she whispered suddenly, pointing toward a cluster of overturned crates near the edge of the battlefield. That's where we'll start. They darted low, using the debris as cover. The soldier's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a reminder of how precarious their situation was. Every step forward felt like tempting fate, but retreat wasn't an option, not anymore. As they reached the crates, he motioned for Lyra to stay put while he checked for traps or hidden dangers. She obeyed without argument, her eyes scanning the perimeter with practiced precision. Inside the crates, they found scraps of ration packs, a few malfunctioning energy cells, and, most importantly, a cache of ammunition. The soldier stuffed as much as he could carry into his pack, his hands trembling slightly from adrenaline. Lyra examined a damaged communicator device, frowning as she turned it over in her hands. This might still work if we can repair it, she said, her voice barely audible. It could give us an edge. He nodded grimly, tucking the device into his belt. Let's hope so. We'll need all the edges we can get. As they regrouped, a sudden flash of movement caught his eye. He froze, raising his weapon instinctively. Across the field, a figure emerged from the shadows, a humanoid silhouette clad in armor marked with insignias unfamiliar to him. More figures followed, spreading out in a calculated formation. Their weapons gleamed dully in the moonlight, and their faces were obscured by masks that gave them an insect-like appearance. They're here, he breathed, ducking lower behind the crates. Who are they? Lyra's expression darkened. Mercenaries. Hired guns who don't care whose side they're on, as long as they're paid. The realization hit him like a punch to the gut. Mercenaries meant no rules, no honor, just death dealt efficiently and mercilessly. Great, he muttered bitterly. Just what we needed. We can't take them head-on, Lyra warned, her voice tight with urgency. They outnumber us, and they're armed to the teeth. Then what do you suggest? He snapped, frustration boiling over. Magic? Some alien trick to make them disappear. Her glare silenced him instantly. Patience, she hissed. And strategy. Follow me. Without waiting for his response, she slipped away from their cover, moving with a speed and agility that left him struggling to keep up. She darted between piles of rubble, using the terrain to mask their movements. He followed, cursing under his breath but unwilling to let her out of his sight. They reached a partially collapsed structure, a makeshift bunker that had likely served as a command post before being abandoned. Inside, the air smelled of burnt metal and decay, but it offered temporary shelter. Lyra crouched near a broken console, her fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease. "What are you doing?" he asked, keeping watch at the entrance. "Buying us time," she replied tersely. After a moment, the console sparked to life, emitting a low hum. She tapped a sequence of commands, and the bunker's external defenses powered on, sending bursts of automated gunfire into the night. Outside, chaos erupted. The mercenaries scrambled for cover, caught off guard by the unexpected attack. Shouts and curses filled the air as their formation dissolved into disarray. "That won't hold them for long," Lyra said, rising to her feet. "But it'll slow them down." The soldier stared at her, equal parts impressed and unsettled. "You're full of surprises, aren't you?" She smirked faintly, though there was no humor in it. "You have no idea." As the sounds of combat faded into the distance, they slipped out of the bunker and into the relative safety of the surrounding wilderness. The soldier glanced back occasionally, half expecting the mercenaries to reappear at any moment. But for now, they had the advantage, however fleeting it might be. "So where to now?" he asked, adjusting the strap of his pack. Lyra hesitated, her gaze distant. "There's a place, a settlement hidden deep in these mountains. It's neutral territory, or at least it used to be. If anyone can help us figure out who's pulling the strings, it's them." He frowned, distrust creeping back in. Neutral territory? In a war zone? Sounds too good to be true. "It is," she admitted. "But desperate times call for desperate measures. Besides—" She turned to look at him, her expression unreadable. "Would you rather take your chances with the mercenaries?" He sighed, knowing she had a point. "Lead the way." As they pressed onward, the weight of their predicament settled heavily on their shoulders. Each step took them deeper into unknown territory, both literal and metaphorical. The soldier couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking straight into another trap, but what choice did they have? Hours passed, marked only by the shifting positions of the twin moons overhead. Fatigue gnawed at the edges of their resolve, but neither dared stop for long. The mercenaries might be regrouping, plotting their next move. Safety was an illusion, and they both knew it. Eventually, they reached a narrow ravine carved into the mountainside. Lyra paused, her hand brushing against the rocky wall. "This is it," she said softly. "Beyond here lies the settlement. But be careful, neutrality doesn't mean friendliness." He nodded, gripping his weapon tightly. "Got it. Stay sharp." Side by side, they ventured into the ravine, the shadows swallowing them whole. The path ahead was treacherous, littered with loose stones and jagged edges. Yet despite the danger, there was a strange comfort in their shared purpose, a quiet understanding that they were stronger together than apart. Unbeknownst to them, however, eyes watched from the darkness. Eyes that saw not just two fugitives fleeing for their lives, but pieces in a much larger puzzle, one that spanned galaxies and centuries. And those eyes belonged to someone who had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. The settlement revealed itself gradually, emerging from the shadows like a mirage born of desperation. Nestled within a natural amphitheater of jagged peaks, it was a patchwork of structures, some sleek and modern, others crude and makeshift. Lights flickered sporadically, powered by generators that groaned under the strain of constant use. The air carried the mingling scents of cooking fires, rusting metal, and something faintly chemical, creating an atmosphere both inviting and foreboding. As they approached, the soldier felt a prickle of unease. Neutral territory or not, this place radiated tension. Figures moved cautiously between the buildings, their faces obscured by hoods or masks. Conversations were hushed, punctuated by wary glances exchanged between strangers who clearly distrusted one another. It was a haven for those with nowhere else to go, but it wasn't peace, it was survival. "This is it?" he asked skeptically, keeping his voice low. "Looks more like a powder keg waiting to blow." Lyra nodded, her expression grim. "Appearances can be deceiving. This place operates on a delicate balance. One wrong move, and it all comes crashing down." Before he could respond, a figure detached itself from the crowd and approached them. Tall and gaunt, with skin like weathered leather and eyes that gleamed with intelligence, The newcomer exuded authority. He wore a long coat patched together from materials scavenged from various species, and a scar ran diagonally across his face, disappearing into the collar of his shirt. "You're new," he stated flatly, stopping a few paces away. His voice was gravelly, carrying the weight of someone who had seen too much and lived to tell about it. "Which means you're either brave or stupid. Which is it?" The soldier stiffened, instinctively reaching for his weapon. Lyra placed a calming hand on his arm, stepping forward slightly. "Neither," she replied evenly. "We're survivors, looking for answers." The man studied her for a moment, then shifted his gaze to the soldier. "Answers cost more than you've got. What makes you think you'll find them here?" "Because this is supposed to be neutral ground," Lyra countered, her tone sharpening. "Or has that changed since the last time I was here?" The man chuckled dryly, though there was no warmth in it. "Neutral doesn't mean safe. Everyone here has a price, including me. Name's Kale. If you want help, you'll pay. If not," he shrugged, letting the implication hang. The soldier exchanged a glance with Lyra, silently asking if they could trust him. She gave an almost imperceptible nod, her jaw tightening. Turning back to Kale, she said, "We need information. About the mercenaries hunting us. And whoever hired them." Kale raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite himself. "That's a tall order. Information like that doesn't come cheap." "We'll pay whatever it takes," Lyra insisted, her voice steady. "But we need assurances. No double crosses." Kale smirked, leaning back slightly. "Assurances? From me? You must be desperate." He paused, considering them. "All right. Here's the deal. You give me something valuable, something worth risking my neck for, and I'll see what I can dig up." "Fair enough." The soldier frowned, suspicion flaring. "What kind of something are we talking about?" Kale's grin widened, revealing teeth stained yellow. "That's up to you. Credits, tech, intel, whatever you've got that's worth trading. But choose wisely. Once you hand it over, there's no going back." Lyra hesitated, her hand drifting to the damaged communicator device tucked into her belt. She exchanged another quick look with the soldier, silently weighing their options. Finally, she pulled it free and held it out. It's old, but functional. Reparable, at least. Worth more than you might think." Kale took the device, examining it closely. His expression shifted slightly, betraying a flicker of interest. "Not bad," he admitted grudgingly. "Smart choice. All right, you've got my attention. Give me a day, maybe two. I'll see what I can find." "And in the meantime?" the soldier asked, his tone clipped. "In the meantime," Kale replied, pocketing the device, "you keep your heads down and stay out of trouble. Easier said than done around here, but it's your funeral if you screw up." With that, he turned and disappeared into the crowd, leaving them standing awkwardly in the center of the settlement. The soldier let out a frustrated breath, running a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. "You sure we can trust him?" Lyra shook her head, her expression troubled. "No. But we don't have a lot of options. For now we wait, and we stay alert." They found a corner of the settlement relatively secluded from the main thoroughfare, setting up a makeshift camp beneath the overhang of a crumbling building. The soldier leaned against the wall, his rifle resting across his knees, while Lyra sat cross-legged nearby, staring into the distance. Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken thoughts. "You think he'll actually come through?" the soldier asked finally, breaking the quiet. Lyra shrugged, her gaze unfocused. "Maybe. Kale's slippery, but he's not reckless. If he says he'll deliver, he will. Whether the information helps us is another story." The soldier grunted in acknowledgement, his mind racing. Even if he does, it's just one piece of the puzzle. There's still so much we don't know. Who's behind all this? Why are they targeting us specifically? And why now? Lyra turned to look at him, her luminous eyes reflecting the dim light of a nearby lantern. "Those are questions we may never fully answer. But every step forward gets us closer to understanding. Closer to surviving. Her words carried a quiet resolve that steadied him, if only for a moment. Still, doubt lingered like a shadow at the edges of his thoughts. What if surviving isn't enough? What if this is bigger than us, than anyone? Lyra didn't answer immediately, her expression thoughtful. Then we adapt. We fight smarter, not harder. We find allies where we can, even among enemies. And we remember why we're doing this. Why are we doing this? He pressed, his voice tinged with frustration. To prove our parents wrong? To rewrite some fairy tale? She smiled faintly, though there was sadness in it. Maybe. Or maybe because we owe it to ourselves, and to everyone who's died fighting for something they believed in, to try. Her conviction struck a chord deep within him, stirring emotions he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Determination, hope, fear, all swirling together in a chaotic mix. He nodded slowly, gripping his rifle tighter. All right. We keep going. Whatever it takes. As they settled into an uneasy rest, the settlement buzzed faintly with activity around them. Somewhere in the distance, a child laughed, a sound so ordinary it felt surreal amidst the chaos. The soldier closed his eyes, willing himself to focus on that single note of normalcy. Tomorrow would bring challenges, dangers, and decisions they couldn't yet foresee. But for now they had each other, and that, somehow, was enough. Yet unbeknownst to them, shadows moved in the periphery of the settlement, watching, waiting. Among them stood a figure cloaked in darkness, observing Lyra and the soldier with an intensity that bordered on obsession. This wasn't coincidence. They were being played, manipulated like pieces on a board far larger than they realized. And the game was far from over. The figure cloaked in darkness lingered at the edge of the settlement, concealed by the jagged overhang of a crumbling structure. Its presence was deliberate, calculated, like a predator biding its time before striking. The soldier and Lyra remained oblivious, their attention focused inward as they tried to process the chaos of their journey thus far. But the figure knew better than to underestimate them. These two were more than mere survivors. They were anomalies, variables that disrupted carefully laid plans. From beneath the hood, sharp eyes glinted with an unsettling intelligence. The figure had been watching them since their arrival, noting every interaction. Their cautious trust in each other, their resourcefulness, their determination to survive against impossible odds. It wasn't just curiosity driving this vigilance. It was purpose. A purpose born of centuries-old agendas and secrets buried deeper than the mountains surrounding the settlement. Kale reappeared not long after nightfall, his silhouette cutting through the dim light of flickering lanterns. He moved with practiced ease, weaving between clusters of wary settlers until he reached the secluded corner where Lyra and the soldier had made camp. His expression was unreadable, but there was a tension in his posture that hadn't been there before, a coiled energy that suggested urgency. "You've got trouble," he said without preamble, crouching near the fire they'd lit to ward off the biting cold. "Bigger than you realize." The soldier sat up straighter, his hand instinctively moving toward his rifle. "What kind of trouble?" Kale hesitated, glancing around as though expecting someone, or something, to materialize out of thin air. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, almost conspiratorial. "The mercenaries hunting you? They're not working alone. Someone's pulling their strings. Someone powerful." Lyra leaned forward, her luminous eyes narrowing. "Who?" "That's the problem," Kale replied grimly. "I don't know. Whoever it is, they're good at staying hidden. But here's what I do know, they've been watching you. Both of you. And they're not happy about whatever you've stumbled into." A chill ran down the soldier's spine, though he fought to keep his expression neutral. "Stumbled into? We didn't stumble into anything. We're just trying to stay alive." "Maybe," Kale conceded. "But sometimes survival means stepping on toes you didn't even know existed. You've caught someone's attention, and not in a way that makes them friendly." Lyra exchanged a glance with the soldier, her unease palpable. "Do you have any idea why we're being targeted?" Kale shook his head. "Not yet. But I'm working on it. In the meantime, he trailed off, his gaze darting toward the shadows beyond the firelight. For a moment, he seemed distracted, almost nervous, an unusual look for someone who prided himself on being untouchable. Then he stood abruptly, brushing dirt from his coat. "Stay sharp. Trust no one. Not even me." Before either of them could respond, he melted back into the crowd, leaving behind only the faint scent of scorched metal and unanswered questions. The soldier exhaled sharply, frustration bubbling to the surface. "Great. Just great. What now?" Lyra stared into the flames, her expression unreadable. "We wait. And we prepare." "For what?" he demanded, his voice rising slightly. "For whoever's coming next. For another ambush? We can't keep running forever." "No," she agreed softly, turning to meet his gaze. "But we also can't afford to stop. Not until we understand what's really going on." Her words carried a weight that silenced him. There was truth in them, a raw acknowledgement of the stakes they faced. They weren't just fighting for their lives anymore. They were unraveling a mystery that spanned galaxies and generations. And somewhere along the way, they had become pawns in a game neither fully understood. As dawn broke over the settlement, casting long shadows across the makeshift shelters, the soldier found himself standing watch while Lyra rested. His mind raced with possibilities, scenarios, strategies, but none offered a clear path forward. Every option came with risks, every decision carried consequences. Yet despite the uncertainty, one thing remained constant, the feeling that they were being watched. He scanned the perimeter methodically, his rifle slung loosely across his chest. Most of the settlers had retreated to their shelters, seeking refuge from the harsh morning light. Only a few stragglers remained, huddled around dying fires or scavenging for scraps among the debris. Everything seemed quiet, almost peaceful, but appearances could be deceiving. Then he saw it. Movement. Subtle, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable. A shadow shifted near the base of a distant cliff, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. His heart skipped a beat, adrenaline surging through his veins. Instinct screamed at him to investigate, but caution held him back. Instead, he nudged Lyra awake, keeping his voice low. "We've got company," he whispered urgently. She stirred instantly, alert despite her exhaustion. "Where?" He pointed toward the cliff, his grip tightening on his weapon. "Over there. Something, or someone, is out there." Lyra followed his gaze, her eyes narrowing as she scrutinized the area. After a moment, she nodded slowly. "Stay close. And keep your weapon ready." Together, they moved cautiously toward the cliff, using the scattered ruins for cover. Each step felt heavier than the last, weighed down by the knowledge that danger lurked just out of sight. As they neared the source of the movement, the air grew colder, carrying a faint metallic tang that prickled at the back of their throats. Then, without warning, the ground beneath them trembled. A low rumble echoed through the valley, growing louder with each passing second. Dust fell from the cliffs above, and cracks spiderwebbed across the rocky terrain. Panic rippled through the settlement as settlers scrambled for safety, shouting warnings that went unanswered. "What the hell is happening?" the soldier shouted, struggling to maintain his footing. Lyra grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a narrow crevice in the rock face. "Earthquake, or something worse. We need to get inside." They dove into the crevice just as the first boulder crashed down behind them, sealing off the entrance. Darkness enveloped them, broken only by the faint glow of Lyra's skin. The soldier fumbled for a flashlight attached to his belt, illuminating their surroundings. They were in a natural tunnel, its walls smooth and cool to the touch. "This way," Lyra urged, already moving deeper into the passage. Her movements were swift and sure, guided by instincts honed over years of navigating treacherous landscapes. The soldier followed, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The tunnel twisted and turned, descending steadily into the earth. The sound of collapsing rock faded behind them, replaced by an eerie silence that pressed against their ears like a physical weight. Finally, they emerged into a cavern unlike anything they had seen before. Stalactites hung from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls, shimmering faintly in the dim light. At the center of the cavern stood a massive structure, a monolith carved from black stone, etched with symbols that pulsed faintly with an inner light. The air hummed with energy, vibrating through their bones. "What is this place?" the soldier whispered, awe mixing with dread. Lyra approached the monolith cautiously, her glowing form reflecting off its surface. She reached out, her fingers hovering inches above the pulsating symbols. "It's ancient," she murmured. "Older than my people, older than yours." As if in response to her touch, the symbols flared brighter, casting the cavern in an otherworldly glow. Images began to form in the air around them. Scenes of battles fought across stars, civilizations rising and falling, beings of unimaginable power shaping destinies with a single thought. And then, amidst the swirling visions, a figure emerged. Tall and imposing, clad in armor that seemed forged from starlight itself, it regarded them with eyes that burned like twin suns. Its voice resonated within their minds, bypassing language entirely. "You seek answers," it intoned, its presence both commanding and terrifying. "But are you prepared for the truth?" The soldier stepped back instinctively, raising his weapon. "Who, or what are you?" The figure inclined its head slightly, acknowledging the question without answering directly. "I am a guardian of knowledge, of truths too dangerous for mortal minds to comprehend. And you?" It turned its gaze to Lyra, who stood frozen in place. "You carry within you the spark of destiny, a legacy written long before your birth." Fear and wonder clashed within her, leaving her speechless. The soldier tightened his grip on his rifle, his voice trembling with anger. "Enough riddles. Tell us what we need to know." The figure regarded him silently for a moment, then gestured toward the monolith. New images appeared, depicting events that sent chills down their spines. Wars waged not just between species, but between dimensions. Forces beyond comprehension manipulating reality itself. And at the heart of it all, a convergence, a meeting point where timelines collided and futures unraveled. "You are not merely survivors," the figure declared. "You are catalysts. The choices you make will determine the fate of countless worlds, including your own." Lyra finally found her voice, her tone steady despite the storm raging inside her. "Why us? Why now?" "Because the time has come," the figure replied simply. "The balance shifts. Chaos rises. And only those who embrace their roles can hope to restore order, or reshape it." With that, the vision dissolved, plunging the cavern back into silence. The monolith dimmed, its light fading until only the faintest glow remained. The figure vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving them alone once more. The soldier lowered his weapon, his hands shaking. What was that?" Lyra didn't answer immediately, her gaze fixed on the monolith. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but resolute. "Our story isn't over. Not yet." Outside the cavern, the figure cloaked in darkness watched as the entrance sealed itself shut, hiding the two intruders from view. A slow smile spread across its face, revealing teeth sharper than any blade. "They've begun," it murmured to itself, its voice dripping with anticipation. "Let the games continue."